Alright, we're back with another quick paint project today. Today we're going to be working on the Old Major from Malifaux. Well, it's a big pig. So we're going to start off by airbrushing in some flesh tones. And let me show you the recipe that we're going to use here. We're going to start off with Vallejo Model Color Violet. Then we'll be moving to Secret Weapon Rubber, Acryl Tan Flesh, and then we're going to shade it all in with Carroburg Crimson. All these are going to be run through the airbrush, all of them thinned down except for the Carroburg Crimson. We're going to start off by airbrushing in a nice, thick base tone of violet, and this will end up showing through the other layers in the end result, but this will be a much subtler base tone. Once we've got a healthy base coat of the violet, I'm going to move on to a little bit of the Secret Weapon Rubber. This is going to be more of a desaturation mid-tone, setting up for some tinting later. So this is going to be very subtle, and you can kind of see it really just brings down the violet to a very muted tone here along most of the model. Don't go overboard. I'm doing this from mostly a top-down perspective. And once we've got the rubber in place, we're going to load up our last tone, the Tan Flesh, and we're going to very lightly desaturate from the top down. You can see I'm taking a very directional approach with this, and it's coming out almost like ghostly white over the purple and the gray that we've laid down. Don't be afraid of doing that. The next step will build this up. So now that we've got those tones built up, we're going to bring in Carroburg Crimson. This is a shade from Citadel, and I'm going to put this straight into my airbrush. Take it very easy, take it very light. You don't want to waste your shade here, and it doesn't take much. We're going to be working up the skin tone and kind of tinting the entire model. I'm stopping a few times here just because I'm getting some airbrush clogging. It's something to check. Another thing I'll mention is that I get a little bit of tearing around one of the eyebrows eventually, and it's probably due to this step. Some of the Carroburg Crimson reactivated the paint, and it tore up a little bit around the eyebrow. I corrected this in one of the intermediate steps, just a quick little bit of brushing, but you can see how this pink tone starts to build over the gray and the violet. This is what you want. Build this up and put a lot of crimson in the shaded areas and the more recessed areas to give it a more blood-like shaded tone. this point, I go to correct that little bit of tearing that I mentioned before. I get a bit of our rubber and tan flesh out onto the palette, and I just give it a little bit of a touch up, and I hit a few highlights here around the face. I want to make sure that some of the things are really coming out a little bit stronger. I'm glazing this down with a very watery mix of those two paints, taking it very easy. I don't want them to necessarily show up. We also want to use that tan flesh to work in the eye sclera, you know, the whites of the eyes. Using the lightest color of flesh tone is usually a safe bet here. We're going to fill in the sclera for now, then we're going to get some of our Vallejo violet back out on the palette and start working that into the lips and the snout of the pig. So you may have noticed we based in the old Major's tongue here with a bit of our violet. And we've got the snout and lips pretty well worked in. We're going to bring some Bloodfest Crimson into the tongue here. And we're also going to work in some Braineater Azure. Follow up with some Harvester Flesh and Moonray Flesh and various bits here. So we're bringing out some of our skin and bone tones. We're going to use those various tones to work up the tongue, the teeth, and the hooves. So we're reusing a bunch of these tones. We're also then going to use a bit of Reaper Nightshade Purple, Braineater Azure Violet on the sash around his neck to get that worked. Not only are we mixing that Nightshade Purple with our Violet to get a nice tone later on here, we're also going to use our Nightshade Purple to set up some of the hair. And then we're going to mix in some of the Braineater Azure into that for a couple of highlights. been setting up the teeth with the Crimson and Azure, and now we're working in the flesh here to make them more bone-like. And we're going to work that flesh into the hooves as well, which have already been worked up with the Crimson and Azure mixture. And we're going to take a quick moment to dot the eyes using a nice dot of Reaper Nightshade Purple. Just a real quick dot right near the top of the eye there. Looking a little bit derpy? Yeah, that's it. Here we finally start mixing in the Nightshade Purple with the violet on the collar. Start blending the violet with a bit of Braineater Azure here on the collar just to get a few highlights. Nothing special, just a little uneven to get a few rough highlights, and we're also going to bring some of that Nightshade Purple in between the cloven parts of the hoofs. Hoofs? Hooves. We're going to reuse a little bit of our Bloodfest Crimson on the actual ribbon for the metal, but we're going to use our classic Mahogany, Averland Sunset, Bright Ivory, and Titanium White mixture to make a bit of a non-metallic gold on both the clasp and the metal itself. Afterwards, we're going to apply a little bit of Old Purell Red and Tan Flesh to the ribbon to highlight it, but that won't be shown in the video. It's something I missed and actually got to after the video. Oops. But until then, just take it very easy on the metal itself. Bring out the details, bring out the high points, get some nice specular highlights. So at this point I'm pretty happy with the old Major. He's done. But we need to make a base for him. I'm going to make a base out of the stock standard Malifaux base that he comes with. But I'm going to use a little bit of Vallejo Mud effect, as well as a little bit of Citadel Crackle texture paint to make a bit of a base, and then we're going to paint it. And through the magic of the internet, we've done so. You can see I've also already primed it, but we're going to move on to using a bit of burnt sienna here. We're going to follow up with a little bit of green Inktensity ink, some more burnt sienna, a little bit of flat earth, and just a smidge of tan flesh. I'm going to start off here with a little bit of airbrush work to lay in the burnt sienna. Afterwards, this is a quick step, I'm going to add another layer of the burnt sienna just to reinforce that, and we're going to make it a little bit uneven. We'll then take a little bit of our Inktensity green, mix that with some water, and just a little bit of Liquitex matte medium here, so it doesn't dry so shiny. You can see I mixed it up here, just a very small smidge of that, a little bit of water, and a little bit of medium here, wicked off the brush. Mix that up, and we start applying a couple of layers to this. In between the layers, we're going to use our drying tool to help dry those a little bit quicker.
A strange day. A strange day. Strange day.
I'm going to bring my burnt sienna back in here and just do a few spot highlights and just kind of feather that in a little bit, make it fairly irregular, not really stop at any particular spot here. Fairly thin, nothing too concentrated. I don't really want to cover up the green, I want to enhance the green, so I'm picking out higher spots here. Afterwards I'm going to be mixing in a little bit of our flat earth, and then we'll move up to tan flesh. I'm almost going to be dry brushing this from here on out, so just keep that in mind. Nothing too strong, nothing too weak. Whoops, I meant Moonray Flesh. Last paint step, let's get out some of our matte black from Army Painter and get the rim nice and solid. Once this is done, I'm going to drill a pin in the bottom of the base as well as the bottom of the Old Mage's foot, mount it to the base, add a couple of grass tufts, and matte coat the entire mini. And here's the final project. After everything's said and done, looks pretty good. That's an award-winning pick. I'll add this to the rest of my Malifaux miniatures so the next time I am ready to crack those out, Old Mage will be ready to go as part of Ulix's crew. This has been a really fun, quick project. I think overall we spent about 2.5 hours on it, and I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week. Catch me on Twitch on the weekends and paint some minis.